everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the April My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. I have a number of older videos on my computer. I filmed them, but I never got a chance to complete them and get them up on my channel. So I'm happy to say that I'm getting there. I have almost completed getting these older videos on my channel. I have one more after this one, and then I will be up to the July videos. For this layout, I'm using the April My Creative Scrapbook sketch. This sketch was created by Laura Whitaker. She makes awesome sketches, and as soon as I saw this sketch, I knew that I wanted to create a layout to go along with it. I am going to put some mixed media in the background. Sometimes I start out with the mixed media, sometimes I start out with the photo cluster. In this case, I'm going to create the photo cluster and then I'm going to add the mixed media when I'm done. I started with a long strip of blue pattern paper. I have a scalloped border along the bottom edge that was made with an EK Success border punch. I have a thin black border on the top, and then I cut out two circles, one slightly larger than the other one. I used my Creative Memories circle cutters to create those. Now I'm working on adding some banners to the layout. So I cut out a strip of this striped pattern paper, and then I cut it in a fishtail, and then I used the fishtail that I cut out as a template for the other side of the banner. This way they would look similar. Now I'm going to add another banner, and I'm going to layer that on top of the first banner. I didn't have enough of this pink paper to go all the way across, so I decided to cut a piece of white cardstock and then attach a piece of the pink paper to either side of the white strip of paper. This has happened to me in the past. I've wanted to use a certain pattern paper for a banner, but I didn't have enough to make a banner going all the way across, and I've tried to just tuck the pieces of the banner on either side, and it never works out well for me. I find that it always turns out crooked. So for me, this is the best approach, to just create a strip of paper to mount the smaller pieces on. I mounted my photo on some white cardstock, and then I made another mat that was very dark in color. It had a lot of black in it. So I was thinking that it might be best to switch up the color of this larger circle to purple. That way there wouldn't be so much black in the same spot. I have the border strip that's black, I have the top strip that's black, and then I have behind the photo with a lot of black. So I thought I would add a little pop of color. On the other side of the large circle, there was a very neutral light pattern. So I used some Distress Oxide in Wilted Violet, and I inked up the edges. And then I used some Distress ink in Black Soot, and I inked the edges of both of these circles. And you can see I'm also inking the edge of that mat that I'm putting behind the photo. Using some ATG adhesive, I attached my photo down to its mat. Now I'm using the Distress ink in Black Soot to ink the edges of the two banners. You could see that I'm sticking very close to the sketch. I'm going to put that pink banner behind the photo, and then I'm going to tuck the striped banner right underneath it. I really enjoyed working with this sketch. It had just the right amount of layering of large elements for me. Sometimes the layering can get really complicated, and I'm always afraid that I'm going to have something that's crooked. But I really like this sketch. I think that it was a pretty easy composition to make. And because there were so many patterns that contrasted with each other, the combination of layers didn't get too complicated. I think you could still read each individual part of this composition. And I've only finished the part that has the picture so far. So now it's time to move on to the strip of paper that's going to go behind the photo. I put some ATG adhesive along the edge. I inked those punched out scalloped border pieces with the Distress ink in Black Soot, and now I'm placing them at the bottom of the strip. I bought this scalloped border punch probably 10 years ago. I was watching Shamel make a layout, and she was using this punch, and I think she actually used this punch quite a bit. So I purchased it and I use it quite a bit too. It's a really nice size scallop. It just seems to be just the right size for so many layouts. You may notice that in the sketch, that larger scalloped border does not go from one side of the page to the other. So I did the same thing with mine. I started it about 3/4 of an inch in on each side. I adhered the photo cluster down to the large strip of paper. And then I decided I wasn't a huge fan of the way that the scalloped border was placed, so I decided to move it so it went all the way to the edge on both sides. I like the idea of trying something a little bit different with the border, but it just didn't work for my eye. I just felt like it looked a little odd without the strip going all the way to the end. So I switched that and then I trimmed it on both sides. In the sketch, there's a tag facing downwards. I decided to do the same thing on my layout. I cut out a tag from one of the pattern papers. I inked the edges, and then I also included some photo corners on this layout. I love adding photo corners, and I use an EK Success scalloped photo corner punch to punch them out from some pattern paper. I placed a chipboard piece under the photo that said, "Just Be You." I was thinking that that could be the title of the layout. And then I included some of the dimensional flowers from this month's kit. I put them in opposite corners. Here I'm using some heavy gel medium to attach the flowers down. I am not attaching anything down to the background. Everything is being anchored to the large cluster. This way I can remove that cluster from the page in a little while and add some mixed media. I also included some of the leaves that came in one of the flower packs. I put 2 behind each flower cluster. Now I'm going to start my mixed media background. I use a pencil to mark off approximately where the large cluster on the background is going to go. I make sure though that it won't be visible once I'm done. Sometimes visible pencil lines are really hard to get rid of once mixed media is added. The paper that I'm using is a piece of 120-pound smooth white cardstock. I already gessoed it. I like to keep a stash of gessoed white paper handy so that when I'm ready to create, I don't have to start preparing paper. I have a piece of paper ready to go. I use the packaging technique to add the color to the background. I just put some spray on a piece of plastic and then I squish the color down. I started off by using a Prima Color Bloom 2 spray in Spring Dandelion, and now I'm adding some Tattered Angels Glimmer mists. I use the color Saffron, and I also use the color Sunlight. These are all slightly different shades of yellow, just to add a little bit of variety to this large area of color. I also really like to add splatters, and the darkest color was the Prima Color Bloom 2, so I decided that I would start out with some splatters of that color. I try to get the splatters to go along the outside edge of the color. That way you'll be able to see them, although you can see some of the splatters throughout the area of color. I noticed a couple of spots that needed a little bit more color. I dried the background and then I sprinkled some water on the background. This is something that I really love to do to add a cool water droplet effect to the layout. Because the background is rather light, it didn't make a huge impact, but I did it twice, hoping that the second time maybe I could leave the water droplets on a little bit longer. But once again, this technique really makes the biggest impact when the background color is a little bit darker. Something I love about making the cluster separate from the background is you can keep trying it over the background to see how it's coming out. Now I'm using a Prima stencil. This is from My Creative Scrapbook kit, and I'm adding some Liquitex modeling paste through the stencil. This will add a nice bit of texture and some pattern to the background. This will also dull down the yellow color just a tiny bit. I chose yellow because that color is in this collection, but I don't have any large pieces of pattern paper that are that color, so I knew that it would coordinate with all of the pattern papers, but it would also contrast with the pattern papers that I've used on the layout. On this particular layout, I don't want the background color and the photo cluster to blend together. I want them to be distinct. I try to keep the modeling paste to the area that has the color, but I do often extend the modeling paste a little bit past the color, not a lot. That's just how I like to add the modeling paste, but there are no rules. You can try anything with mixed media and get lots of different effects. I wanted to add just a touch of black in the background since I have so much black in the photo cluster. Right now I'm using a dot stamp. This is a Tim Holtz stamp, and I'm also using some StazOn ink in jet black. I will often load up the background with a lot of stamping. In this case though, I am being more conservative, and I actually was successful with not overdoing it. I'm just, like I said, wanting to add a little bit of black to tie all the areas of the layout together. I like this particular stamp because all of the dots are very tiny, but some of them are a little smaller than others, which adds a little bit of variation to the stamping. This stamp came on a Tim Holtz set of stamps that had some mushrooms on it, but this by far is the stamp that I use the most. Now I'm adding some watered down white acrylic paint splatters. Again, because the background is very light, this doesn't have as big of an impact as it would if I had a very dark background, but I still think that it adds a little something to the background. Now I'm cleaning up a couple of areas in the background by adding a little bit of gesso. Then I continue adding more splatters on the other side of the layout. In the past, I've tried to use the white acrylic paint to cover up little mistakes or little things that I didn't like in the background, but the acrylic paint is a different color than the gesso, so now I try to be careful to use gesso whenever I want to fix something in the background. I decided that I wanted to trim down the mixed media background and mount it on some pattern paper and some cardstock too. So I started off by gutting this piece of pattern paper from the kit. I'm going to use this old piece of pattern paper with all the squares on it as a base to attach all of the other layers down to. I have my pattern paper border, and then I have a piece of black cardstock that I'm layering on top of it. The black paper is just going to be a very thin border around the mixed media paper. I have the mixed media paper cut to size. I put a lot of ATG adhesive on the back of the mixed media paper. Because it has mixed media on it, it tends to buckle a little bit more than the other papers, so I want to make sure that there's a lot of adhesive. I have a lot of adhesive on the back of that mixed media paper, so I'm very careful about lining it up and placing it correctly on the black mat. And then I trim down the large strip to fit inside of the piece of mixed media paper. And now I'm adding some adhesive to the back and finally attaching that down to the layout, and I place it in the center of the background. Well, I was going to allow the piece of chipboard that said "Just Be You" to be the title, but the layout looked a little bare, so I decided that I was going to add this title "Beautiful Life" to the bottom, and both of those are foam stickers, so I like the way those two pieces fit together, the word beautiful and the word life. So I put that in the lower left-hand corner. And now I'm adding some butterflies. These are all fussy cut butterflies in different sizes and different colors. And I'm spreading them around the background to add a little bit of something to it. I added a very tiny butterfly to one of the flowers. And now I'm going to add some embellishments to the page. I added some black dots to the two photo corners. Now I'm going to add some very tiny pearls to the centers of all of the butterflies. Because the butterflies are very colorful and there are a lot of different colors, there's purple, pink, and orange, I decided that I would match the color of the pearls as close as possible to the colors of the butterflies. As I add the different colors to the butterflies, I add a very small pearl to the word life, so that when I'm all done adding the pearls to the butterflies, I'll have a different color pearl on each of those 4 letters. I forgot that there was a little green butterfly on the layout. I used some green pearls for that butterfly, and then of course I added a green pearl to one of the letters of the word life. I think it's amazing how much the butterflies added to the layout. It went from, in my eyes, looking very plain to looking more complete. Whenever I have butterflies on a layout, I always feel like I want to add pearls to the center, and banners are the same. Whenever I have one, I want to add some embellishment to them. I added purple pearls to the smaller pink banner, and then I added some orange pearls to the larger banner. Then I finished off the layout by adding 2 very tiny blue pearls to the very tiny butterfly next to the word life. This layout is now complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to watch this video. I really hope that you enjoyed watching it. If you've been watching, I hope that you're enjoying some of these slightly older My Creative Scrapbook process videos. If you take a look in the description box, you'll find a link to the My Creative Scrapbook website where you can order a kit subscription if you're interested. Also, check out their social media for lots of inspiration. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.